All right, we are live on Facebook on Las Vegas Tri Club Facebook page, and we are recording. I'm John Mercer, president of Las Vegas Triathlon Club, and we've got Ted Gerard, ambassador for Tri Club. Hey Ted, how's it going? Friday night.
Good. It's Friday night. It's time to talk triathlon again.
Yeah, that's great. So
yes.
This weekend's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to actually have an event.
I know.
Right? So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so it's a long weekend, so that's nice. So that always means, a little extra training.
Yep.
But Monday is our Strava time trial day.
Yes. It's been a while since we've hosted one, and a while since we've hosted one on this course.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty excited because I've actually had a pretty good amount of big training blocks getting ready for my epic October, and I'm kind of interested to see where I'm at.
Yeah, you've been doing some serious climbing.
Yeah, so we'll see if that translates over into time trialing. I don't know about you, but I hadn't been on my time trial. But you ride yours a lot, but I hadn't been on my time trial bike in about 5 weeks.
Oh, cool.
And this week I busted it out on Monday, and I rode it on Monday, and then actually I put it on my trainer, and I raced a time trial on Zwift on Wednesday. In the time trial position, just to kind of see where I was at. Mm-hmm. And it's weird, right? Like even 5 weeks off of the time trial bike, the muscles, like the next day, my glutes were off, a little bit sore than they normally are. And mm-hmm. So I think this is good that we have this, because I don't know how many other triathletes have been, rolling around on road bikes a lot, because we have been, there's been no racing. So this will be good.
Well, let me ask you, how different is your time trial setup versus your bike in terms of bike seat height?
Yeah, so I've actually tried really hard to measure it exact. I have the same saddle on both bikes, mm-hmm. Same pedals, same crank length on both, but the position, right? Because on the time trial bike, it's so much more steeper angle, right? So the length is the same, but the angle is different. Mm-hmm. And I really, I really feel, I feel the glutes working a lot more when I'm in the time trial position. Okay. If I'm sitting up, I don't really notice that much difference between my road bike and the time trial bike. But when I'm time trialing, I definitely feel it. I don't know. What do you think?
How far is your saddle behind the bottom bracket on your road versus time trial? Just a sense.
It's probably, I honestly, I'm going to say 5 centimeters.
Okay.
So like 2.5 inches, is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's for the road bike?
Yeah.
And then how far for the time trial?
Oh, it's as close. I can look at it right now. The nose is almost directly over the.
Wow, that's steep.
Over the bottom bracket. But obviously that's the nose, right? And I sit further back. And I'm looking at it right. Honestly, it probably is like 1 or 2 centimeters, one centimeter behind the bottom bracket.
Okay. Interesting. So yeah, that's a little different position. So you're going to use muscles a little bit differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Like when you look at, even the professional riders, and they talk about, the time trial specialists, in like the Tour de France, if you're watching that now, these guys put a lot of hours into the time trial, into that position. Whereas the average, road cyclist, even in the Tour de France, they may only spend a few sessions in the time trial position if they're not trying to win a time trial, mm-hmm. Because it takes a lot of hours to really dial it in. And like if we were racing this fall, I would have definitely been spending way more hours on the time trial bike, or in the time trial position especially.
Well, and the advantage obviously of the time trial position is lower drag force because of your CDA, your coefficient of drag and frontal area. And you're right, you've got to dial that in, try to get that number as low as possible, and then you got to get used to riding in that position.
Yeah. Can you, for me, because I mostly do the 70.3s, can I hold it for 2.5 hours?
Yeah, right.
And produce wattage, mm-hmm. and be able to run off of it. Because that's the other advantage of a time trial bike, or at least a triathlon bike, is when we're in that steeper position, we do put more pressure, or more of the strength comes from the glutes. Allows the hamstrings, I believe, to be just a little bit less used. Mm-hmm. And I tend to use my hamstrings a little bit more when I'm running, but it means nothing if I get off the bike and I can't run.
Yeah.
It doesn't,
Doesn't matter.
it means very little. So, actually let's talk, I wanted to actually talk about CDA today.
Yeah. Okay.
We talk about triathlon, because I think that for most people, they may not fully understand exactly what CDA is. And I mean, we talk about CDA all the time at work and some of the research projects we've done. So, you did a nice little job with a whiteboard the other day.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to give us a little lesson in CDA, or do you want me to? Or
no, sure. Let me talk through. I don't have my thing set up, but
I'm sorry, we didn't plan on this, but I thought it'd be a good idea.
let me see if I got my cable here. This is totally unplanned, but that's okay. So drag force is a resistance force, and drag force is we see that anytime we move an object through a fluid, and in this case the fluid is air. For swimming, obviously we have drag force, and the fluid then is obviously the fluid being the water. And so, but the equation for drag force is exactly the same if we're in the water or if we're on air. The only thing that's different is the density of the fluid that we're moving the object through.
And we did break this down when we did our swim talk, but I think that this is exponentially different. And I know you say it's the same, and it is the same equation, but the speed variability is so much different on the bike versus in the water.
So you're right. There's two things, and I'll put the equation down in just a second. So you have you're going faster on the bike, but in the water is about 800 times more dense than air.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's the biggest.
But what I was getting at, John, is the difference between, for example, climbing your bike at, let's say, 8 miles an hour versus going downhill at 35 miles an hour. The speed is it reduces the drag force exponentially, but cubed, right?
Well, you're right. It's cubed when you're dealing with power, but it's squared if you're dealing with the force.
Right. So what I was getting at is I think if we understand CDA a little bit more, it may actually give us an idea of why it's so critical to maintain really low CDA at higher speeds, and when we're going slower, not as critical. Because I think that helps in your time trialing when you decide, oh, I'm going to sit up for a second, or take a drink, or reposition yourself. I think that at least I think like that.
No, that's perfect, because I think that's even in like an iron distance or a half iron.
Yep.
You're looking for spots that you can sit up and not negatively influence your CDA, or because you've got a tailwind.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas obviously we don't have that change in the water, right? In the water, we're almost always, even though it's 800 times more dense, we are not at a position where we are we're not changing speed that much. And the water going across us doesn't change speed very much, unless we're in a river.
All right, let me try and draw a bike.
Okay.
Here's okay, it's pressure's on. Here's my diamond frame, not my diamond frame, but the diamond style geometry. Here's the ground here. Here's a seat and so forth. And then we got a rider on here. All right,
that's pretty good, actually. I'm impressed.
Close enough, right?
Yep.
All right, so when we start looking at the mechanics of cycling, we start identifying forces acting on the bike rider system. And a force is any push or a pull that tends to move something. All right, so the first force that we need to identify is what makes us go forward, and that's the propulsion force. So I'm going to draw that as an arrow here best I can, so it shows up decent. That's the force of the ground pushing on the bike, and that's what's going to propel the bike forward. Now, obviously, this force is coming from the crank, but I'm only putting forces on the bike rider system. That's the way that the physics problem gets set up.
Yeah.
So this would be F propulsion. All right. So now, what other forces are acting on the bike rider? Well, gravity pulling down on the object. I'll just draw that from the center of mass of the rider. We actually have the ground pushing up on the wheel vertically here, and up here vertically here. I'm not going to worry too much about these because we're going to be talking about going forward, not necessarily going up and down.
Yeah.
But those are still forces that I need to account for. Then we also have what the project that you and I have been working on with Flow Wheels is rolling resistance. And I'm trying to draw that here. This is a bigger arrow than it actually is. But these two forces represent the resistance to rolling forward. Now that's not friction. Now sometimes we'll say rolling friction, but it's not friction because there's no sliding. So the wheel is not sliding. But this would be something if I just gave the wheel by itself a push on the street and it was rolling, 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 eventually it would stop if it would be able to maintain a up and down position. And that stopping is because there is some rolling resistance. And I think we can get into that on another call.
Yep.
But that has to do with how much compression the wheel has and how much recoil it has as it goes over each bump.
Yep.
All right. And then the force that we want to talk about tonight is this one. And I'll draw it up here. F drag force. And I'm drawing it as a resistance force pushing against the rider. But obviously it's acting on all aspects of the bike.
Right.
All right, so now if we do our kinetic analysis, we use Newton's second law of motion. We add up all the forces acting on the object in one direction. I'm only going to do the horizontal direction. And then we get mass times acceleration. So I'll put F, I'm just going to do P for propulsion, plus, and I'm going to call that positive because it's pushing in the direction we're moving. Then I'm going to add in these other forces, but they're pointing against the rider. So I'm going to make those negative forces. So I'm just going to do F rolling resistance. I'm going to combine the rear and the front wheel just because I'm lazy. And then I'm also going to put drag in here. And then I'm going to put one more here. I didn't leave myself enough room. If we start going uphill, like you're going to do on your Everesting, yep, this gravity force actually starts to have a parallel component that actually opposes direction of movement. So if I turn the bike totally this way, or going up a hill that's 90 degrees, this gravity force factor is actually pulling down here, which would be exactly opposite to our propulsion force. So the length of this force here due to gravity is all going to be a function of how steep the hill is. Yeah. This is why you want to have the lightest bike as possible when you're going up hills, because that resistance force will be smaller. So I'm going to put that here. I'll just call the F slope. We add those all up and we get mass times acceleration of the system. All right, so here's what we want to talk about tonight. Yep. Is this part right here. Now I don't have power in here yet, but I can get power if I multiply both sides of this equation by velocity, or how fast the rider is going. All right, but let's zero in on the drag force. So,
yeah, because that's the most critical part that we can affect by our position and by a lot of our equipment choices.
That's right. So now drag force, the drag equation is equal to 1/2 rho CdA V squared. All right, rho is the density of the fluid. So humid air is going to be different density than dry air. Water is more dense than air.
Well, altitude also, right?
Perfect. Yep, I was just going to say that. So if you go to altitude, that's going to be less dense. So you can actually, if you're really going to try to pick out a super fast day, you want to get a rho as low as possible. Now the trick with altitude is you're sacrificing the availability of oxygen, yep, while also reducing rho. So there's a physiological component that you got to account for. V, I'm going to jump to that side of to that parameter over here, is how fast the fluid is moving over the object. All right, now, and I say it that way because that's not your ground speed.
Exactly.
Because if you've got a tailwind, this V is going to be very different than your than your ground speed. If you get a headwind, this V is going to be different than your ground speed. So this is not ground speed. This is how fast the fluid's moving over you. If the wind starts hitting you from the side, that's also going to ultimately influence how fast the fluid's moving over you and how it's moving over to you. So then we got two other parameters here, CD, that's coefficient of drag. And that's how well the fluid moves over the object based upon its shape and surface characteristics. So an object that allows the fluid to move over it really easily is going to have a low CD. That CD is going to be a function of the side profile of the object, as well as some of the surface characteristics of the object and how it interacts with the fluid. So if we look at our classic teardrop type of shape, if this is a side view, that air is going to move over, or that fluid is going to move over this object, and the easier it moves over the object, the lower the CD.
Yep.
And it could get stuck along the surface here. That can drop, that can make the CD higher. All right, so we got to be careful about what the surface is like and how that surface interacts with the fluid. And then A is the frontal area. So on a bike, if you look at the biker straight on, you just look at how much surface area is being moved perpendicular to the fluid. So if it's a headwind, we just look at the cyclist from straight on. But if it's a side wind, we have to look at it a little differently. So this is always perpendicular to the flow of the fluid. So if this is the flow of the fluid here, the perpendicular view of this may actually look something more like that.
Right.
Because the wind is going straight on, in this case, hitting that object. Now, a lot of times it's a little hard to separate these two parameters out, or there's no benefit in trying to separate them out. But they do have different concepts or different things that we sort of focus on. So collectively, we typically just refer to them as one parameter, CDA, but really it's two parameters.
Yeah.
All right, so now bike position is going to be it will influence this parameter, because the bike position will clearly give you a different type of profile from the side view and also your front view.
Yep.
And these two will go hand in hand, especially when you have, something like a biker. So the lower you get this, the less drag force and the less resistance force here, and your propulsion force will allow you to move forward.
Yep. So when we're talking about, obviously, time trialing, we can't make very many adjustments other than to the CDA as far as this is concerned, right? Or we can't do anything about the density because everyone's going to race relatively the same
That's
time.
right. That's constant.
We can't do anything about, well, the fluid moving over the object. I mean, if you go faster.
Yep.
But really, I mean, that's nothing we can really determine, right? Like we're going to be going as fast as we can go.
The wind direction is the wind direction.
It is what it is. You can choose to look at all your weather metrics and decide, oh, I want to leave at this time. But normally in like a triathlon, it is what it is everyone starts at the same time, and
yep.
It is what it is.
Now I do, and we talked about this when we were talking about doing route planning. I love doing my ride to Searchlight, but I only do that ride when it's a south wind.
Yep.
Because I know the south wind is going to give me a lot of drag force going out to Searchlight. And then the south wind will give me less drag force coming back.
So let me ask you the $1 million question. Have you ever ridden out there and the wind switched and you weren't planning it?
Yes.
Ride home.
It does happen. And
exactly. Right?
Yeah, it does.
I do the same thing when I go to Indian Springs. Everything looks like it's going to be that exact scenario where I'm going to get a tailwind on the way home. It's going to be good, and it switches.
Yep.
So when that happens, and this is why I wanted to bring that up, what do you do as a rider to at least make that effect not as significant?
Well, the big thing is staying in your aero position as best as possible, and that
So trying to reduce your frontal area, number one, right?
that's right. And this is where I think we started talking about this is you have to be able to sustain that position, because if you keep popping up out of that position, you keep increasing this set of the parameters in this equation, and you keep increasing drag force. So you can have the best aero position in the world, but if you can only be in that aero position 70% of the time of your ride, you're not helping yourself. You're better to have a more conservative aero position.
Yeah. And I think that's where sometimes we get into problems with a bike fit and bike fitters and people's, they're wanting to look like Jan Frodeno on a bike.
Yeah.
Right. He's got the most unbelievable time trial position, maybe the best in the world. Well, at least in triathletes, right? Rowan Dennis, maybe even better, or Tom Dumoulin or somebody like that. But realistically, unbelievable position, and can hold it for 5 hours or 4 hours.
Oh.
So then some people will look at that and say, I want that position because I want to have my CDA as low as possible. I want to be like Jan Frodeno, but they can't hold that position for the time that they need to hold it. So every time they pop up and sit up for a couple of minutes, stretch their back out, they're doing so much more damage to their time that it ends up basically breaking the equation. And
that's right.
They need to find a fit that they can hold for the amount of time they need to hold it for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
No, that you're spot on. And you're right. If you look at Jan Frodeno or Sebastian Kienle, I mean, these are great positions for triathlon. If you look at, people trying to do an hour world record, they're going to have a much more aggressive position. One, to get that lower CDA, they may not need to run off the bike, but then even more so for us mere mortals, we can't, not everyone can sustain an aggressive CDA for 112 miles, for 56 miles. And so you sit up out of your aero position, you sit on your bullhorns, and it's like, well, now your average CDA for the ride is going up. And so comfort's a big deal. And I see Chip Henry actually just posted about getting comfortable. And yeah, I think comfort is number one. And then getting a good get as low as a CDA while you're also comfortable. Yeah.
And then we take that to the next level that you can actually produce power on.
That's right.
Right, because it's comfort, but also the the ability to actually push the pedals hard.
Yep.
Right, because once again, you could get to a really, really aggressive position, and you can't push the pedals as hard. So you're losing power to be in a better position. Now, there's always going to be a trade-off there. It might be better, right? You might say in that position, I'm 20 watts lower, but my CDA is so much lower that I actually win. Right. Yeah. Because, and we've talked about this before. I don't know if it was on one of our talks, but the idea of riding in a time trial or riding your bike as fast as you can is actually to cover the distance as fast as you can with the least amount of power.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that sometimes we look at Strava and we're like, oh man, that guy did 330 watts for an hour. And you look at his time, you're like, well, he didn't go that fast to get there. And another guy does 250 watts and he gets there faster. And it's like, well, their power meters must be wrong.
Yep.
And it's no, it's not their power meters. It's this person's position was so much better.
That's right.
Because if you had to choose, actually, this is a great question for you, John. If you had to choose, 20 more watts or a 5% better CDA or 10% better CDA, what would you choose?
Well, I want to do the race as fast as possible with the least amount of power.
Exactly.
So I can run afterwards. And so I would lean towards the lower CDA because power is what we feel. That's how hard the exercise is.
Yep.
So I might as well, maybe let me just jump to that. So if I go back to my original equation here it is here, I'm going to rewrite it. but I'm going to be super lazy. We do this lazy all the time in physics. So if I put my propulsion force here and I add in all the resistance forces, and I get MA over here. Now, what do we want to do during cycling long distances? We want to have a constant velocity.
Yep.
So if velocity is constant, that means our acceleration goes to 0. Now, I'm going to do this now. I actually can leave it in and explain it later, but I'm going to try to go constant velocity, and therefore A is 0 meters per second squared. That makes this equation equal to 0.
Yep.
So now I can do F propulsion plus resistance forces equals 0, and that's newtons. That's just, we could use pounds if we wanted to. So now I can just, oh, sorry, that's a negative sign right there. Now I can just switch this over and I get F propulsion equals all the resistance forces when we're trying to go constant velocity.
Yeah, which for the most part, we would like to.
That's right. But where's power and where's our speed? Well, here's the little trick that we do is we got an equation here, an equality sign, and I'm going to multiply this side of the equation by how fast we're going. And then I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. So whatever I do to one side of the equation, I got to do the same thing to the other side.
Yep.
Now, it's important to know from mechanics, power is equal to force times velocity. That's just an equation we need to know.
Yeah.
Units of power are watts. Here's power right here.
Exactly.
So now I'm going to write this as power equals resistance forces times how fast we're going. Or let me rewrite it, just do some algebra here. I'll do velocity, how fast we want to go, is a function of power over resistance forces.
Yep.
So what's the power? Power is obviously what our power meters are telling us. But conceptually, this is telling us how fast we're converting chemical energy to mechanical energy.
It's how hard we're working.
That's how hard we're working. It's how much VO2 there is.
Yep.
It's how hard it's not heart rate, but heart rate is a proxy for VO2. This is your intensity right here. The bigger this number, the harder you're working. Yep. So if you can raise your power, that's great. But if you can also reduce your resistance forces, you're going to go faster for given power.
Yeah. So really it's a balance. It's always a balancing act between how much effort and how much resistance to get the velocity you want to go.
Yep. No, that's right. And this is the funny thing about cycling. Like, let's say you buy we've talked about tires, and let's say you buy the best tires that have the least rolling resistance, which is going to lower this parameter right here. Yep. And you start biking and you're like, oh, this still feels so hard. Well, that's because you're still generating the same power.
Yep.
But if you can reduce this, you'll go faster.
Exactly.
So you always feel the power. You always feel the intensity. Yep. Your equipment and your position, you can lower that.
Yep.
And then go faster.
Yeah. So I think that takes us to thinking about it like time trialing, right? And we can take just purely time trialing, or we can just talk about the cycle portion of a triathlon. Is really we need to do everything we can to get the FR as low as possible.
That's right.
Right, and do as much training as we can to get our power as high as possible, that we can still run off the bike.
No, that's so. I loved how you said that. This is all training. Well, and position as well.
Yep.
And in essence, this is equipment, position down here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I know I've talked to enough of the triathletes and even some of the members in the club. A lot of people don't like to think or don't like to make those decisions and don't think about those decisions as much. Mm-hmm. They think about the training. And I don't get me wrong, I love training. Like, I love getting out there on my bike. It makes me feel so good.
Yeah.
Right. But I also love thinking about the FR.
Yeah. Right.
And to me, like, that is just as much a part of the game is you know, I won't put some, for example, I won't put something on my bike for race day that I haven't considered the FR.
Mm-hmm.
I won't wear something that I don't consider the FR.
Yeah, right.
You know, I just won't. I just, you know, that goes into my choices. And remember, like when we're talking about this, everything we do like that, it's our choice.
Mm-hmm.
Equipment is our choice. Now I understand, like, yeah, things are expensive, you know, and oftentimes to get the lowest FR, it costs more money,
Yeah.
but not always.
Right.
Right. Like I'll give you the good example of a tight fitting jersey versus a loose jersey.
Yep. That's a good one.
They cost the same amount of money.
Yep.
But the tight fitting jersey is going to drop my FR. My
Yep.
loose fitting jersey is not. It's going to actually increase it. So it's not always just about money.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And tire pressure. That doesn't cost anything.
Tire pressure is free.
Yep.
Right. And we'll give a little plug to the Silka. You know, they've got the tire pressure calculator that is now, I think it's out of beta now.
Yep.
And I think we talked about it before on another of one of these episodes. I encourage people to go and look at that and calculate out what their optimal tire pressure is. And it'll, you know, for some people, it'll really blow your mind where your optimal tire pressure needs to be.
Well, that's a lot of I'll give a plug to Flow Wheels and on and really pushing the research on understanding the influence of tire pressure out in the real world.
Yeah, they were absolutely some of the very first people to make that into the mainstream, for sure. I think it's Tom Anhalt, I think, is the pioneer, though, from Slow Twitch. But like I said,
Tom did it more indoors and on velodrome.
Yeah,
I think John and Flo, that they moved it outdoors.
Yeah,
that's what's so cool. All right, so back to the Power Hero.
Yep.
So this, and I'm seeing Luigi's comment on go easy on the easy part, hard on the hard part. That's relating to this and time trial strategy is that you can't blow up going in different sections. You know, you still have to have a power target, because if you go too hard, well, now you're gonna destroy yourself, and you won't be able to recover and have a good overall time trial.
I would like to say, you know, and I'm not looking at the comments, but to Luigi on this one, because I think he's right, but I think it's go a little bit harder on the hard sections and a little bit easier on the easier sections.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you know that's always my strategy in a time trial. And it's more having to do with, once again, now we're talking about the velocity of air or velocity of the fluid. Because if I'm going up a hill, I'm going slower. That's the harder section.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about the velocity of air going across me is slower. So I'm actually getting less, basically I'm getting less resistance from that flow. So then I can go harder. And remember, you mentioned it. It's the square root of that too, or just a square of that.
Yeah. So
it has more influence.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. It's squared in that equation. So,
and when we bring out the your software for best bike splits, that's exactly what it's going to show. Is on the uphills, it wants you to go 10 to 20% harder. Right. On the downhills, it wants you to go 10 to 20% or less power.
That's right, and I think that's spot on. And I think for the longer the race, the less fluctuations in power that we want to see throughout the race. But
yeah, exactly.
A 20K time trial, you just got to lay it out there.
That's actually interesting. So do you have your your software? Because for me, in the time trial on Monday, I'm going to do exactly what Luigi said on the climb up Oak Creek.
Yep.
I'm going all in.
Okay.
Right. And because physiologically, I know when I get to the top, there's a little downhill I can recover.
Yep.
And when I'm going to be going a little bit faster, and I can actually put out less watts, and it won't penalize me as much. But this software, for everybody that's watching this software is amazing software, and we've talked about it a little bit before. I use this so many times. I've used this so many times to calculate out exactly how many watts to put out to determine my bike leg on on either a time trial or in a triathlon, because I mean, honestly, it really is. It's almost like cheating if you can stick to your plan.
Yeah. No, it's some incredible math and the database that they have, not only on routes and GPS data, but then also weather data.
Yeah, it's the combination of both for sure.
All right, so here's best bike split, and I did load in your GPX file from Strava. So this is your file here.
Yep.
So starting in Blue Diamond, finishing over here at Charleston. And he doesn't have the elevation on here. Oh, this I guess is yellow. No, okay, so
elevation is blue.
More than I have, but I've got it in my profile because I'm
you have elevation there, John. It's the blue line.
Okay. Oh, this blue line here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this faint one right here. Got it. Okay. All right, so here we've got power on the y-axis, and this is distance on the x. So going to 11.5 miles. And the orange line is the amount of power that the program is telling me I should be hitting at different parts of the race. And this is exactly what you and Luigi are talking about, going hard at the hardest part. So this is the top of the hill right here.
Yep.
And then, well, actually it has me going pretty hard at the end there too.
That's an interesting one. I don't know why it has you going hard at mile 6.
Yeah, right. That seems like it's a little bit of a lag.
Oh no, that's your speed. Sorry, John.
Oh,
that's
right. That's my speed. Yeah, here's
the
power.
The blocks are the power.
This is power here. Sorry.
Yeah. So on the climb, right where you are there, it's telling you to go really hard. And then the next time it goes up again, there's a little hill there to going up to that spot there. There is a little hill there, and it wants you to go really hard again there, which makes
302 watts.
Yep.
Yeah.
But then it drops you back down to 216.
Yep.
Because now you're going to be going a lot faster.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's look at some numbers over here. This is my predicted time, 27:35. I should have gone and looked at what I've done before, and
I think that's pretty close to what you've done before.
Pretty close, yeah. Average speed, average power. I'm going to have to average 260 watts. Normalized power 269. So that's not giving me a lot of fluctuation in power, but it drops down here. The bigger these two numbers are, the bigger the difference between these two numbers, meaning more fluctuation.
Well, that's the next line. That's your variability index.
That's right. And so if this is 1, these two numbers are exactly the same.
Yep. And this is maybe we talked a little bit about this before, but so your variability index, once again, it's how much swing you have in your power throughout the ride. And for example, like in a longer triathlon, it's even more critical to keep that low.
Mm-hmm.
And physiologically, we talk about burning matches all the time. Keeping your variability index under, I think it was in an Ironman, they were suggesting keeping it at under 1.05 was considered really, critical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then your intensity factor, the next line. So that is based off of your FTP. So this is basically saying you're going at FTP. So intensity factor of 1.00 is 100% FTP.
Mm-hmm.
So now, John, I'm going to be your coach. Are you ready for this?
Yep.
I'm going to tell you that if that truly is off of your true FTP, let's say you did an FTP test on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
I would say you need to go more watts because this is only 27 minutes, right? And FTP should be built off of an hour.
I should. And I haven't done my FTP test since last time we did it.
Yeah.
Which I probably have 270 entered in this. And it's probably a little lower than that right now.
So then that might be a really good number for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So TSS.
So TSS is a formula that is built off of your FTP. Okay, so actually, I think that I'm trying to remember the math here, but it's basically a training scoring stress of 100 is 1 hour of all out at FTP.
Mm-hmm.
So you're basically, because you're going just under an hour at basically 100% of FTP, that's why it's giving you a 45. Yeah. If this was a 30-minute, if you would have done 30 minutes, it would have been a 50.
Yep, that's right. All right, watts per kilogram, that's just a normalized number so we can talk to each other and compare numbers.
Compare person to person, right? So I'll do, if I was to do this exact same wattage, because I weigh less than you, my watts per kilogram would be 4.
Mm-hmm.
I know at 263, my watts per kilogram is 4.
Okay.
And on Zwift, for those of you that ride on Zwift and on Ruvi, they use watts per kilogram to determine how fast you're going, because that makes it a level playing field for everybody.
Average yaw, that's this blue arrow right here.
Yeah.
That's the direction of the wind pushing on us. And that's what's cool. If I move my cursor along different parts of the course, he's got this based upon historical wind data.
I actually, John, when you download this, if you did it today, it will be actually off of the forecast for Monday. If you put the date.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So one of the tricks with this is, and this is something I always did when I was racing with Best Bike Splits, is the morning of the race, run it again.
Oh, okay.
Because it's the closer you get, the more accurate the wind is.
Oh, nice. Okay, I'll run it again. I'll run it before I go out there and see.
Yeah. So that's a little trick. Or I would run it like the night before, because maybe the morning of a big triathlon, you don't want to be thinking about about this, but I would run it like that. And yeah, so that's just something that I think it's pretty cool that they're showing that yaw angle, the average yaw for the entire race. Because for those of us that have been out there, I actually know that average yaw is completely wrong, because there's a vortex that happens in that area because of the way the mountains are.
Okay.
And you never know what way the wind is going to be going. It can change 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, so drastically.
Yeah.
That, it's a total gamble out there with that. And I think that the other problem is they're going off of obviously off of weather stations, and the weather station I think they go off of there is actually at the Overlook. Okay. And so, or at the visitor center. It's actually at the visitor center, I think. And so like those are things that obviously when you're out in places like this where there's not a lot of weather stations, the weather data is not as good. Yeah. Whereas if you were racing somewhere, or let's say you were racing, I don't know, maybe in St. George. So you're a lot in the town. Yeah. Right. And around the town, there's a lot of houses and stuff like that. There was more weather stations. Yeah. And you'll get better data. It's amazing. All right. Yeah. So here's CDA. Yeah. Here's our parameter that we were talking about. Now, 0.2179, that's probably a little low for me. I probably, after I do this time trial, I'm actually going to put the data in here and let it calculate a new CDA for me at that point. Yeah, that's actually what you can do in this program is retrospectively, it'll create a CDA for you, which is actually super cool. All right, I'm getting a call at the. All right, so but I can show some more data where this changes. Like this can be, for some of our races I've seen as high as 0.26, 0.27. Those are races that had a lot of climbing. Yeah. Because I'm up out of the Earl position, and that raises the CDA. Yeah, for sure. Like in this one, I'm sure other than maybe that one climb, you'll probably be in the time trial position the entire time. Almost time, yeah. Except so it'll probably give you a really good CDA for this one. Right in here. All right, this is what I really love about this program, though. This time analysis. Yes, it's super cool. You can get lost in playing with this. But let's say that I think my CDA is low, and 0.21 is a really good CDA. Yeah. 0.25 is probably reasonable for a lot of people to be able to sustain. If you get under 0.2, I don't know, Lionel Sanders put a lot of work in. Didn't he get under 0.2? I think most of the pro triathletes now, the top level guys, are right at 0.2 or below. Yeah. If they spend time in wind tunnels and. Yep, that's right. So if I manipulate this parameter, it changes all the data and it gives me a new adjusted time. Yeah. So now obviously I'm slower for a higher CDA. Yeah. And so again, that was just 30 seconds longer. So let's say, John, you sit up on that climb. That's right. But because you sat up, you're able to put out more wattage. Yeah. adjust your power output here as well and say, well, you know what, my average power is going to go up 10 points.
Yep.
Now you can actually start to see the balance between CDA and wattage.
That's right. Or now I'm going to wear my aero helmet instead of my road helmet.
Yeah.
So why? Because if I wear my aero helmet, that's going to keep this lower.
Yep.
And it will allow me to go faster time. Who knows? Maybe I wear my skin suit as well.
You better.
Drop my CDA. I'm not doing anything different with power. I'm not adjusting weight, nothing else. All I'm doing is changing that CDA parameter. And now I've gone 10 seconds faster.
Yeah.
And so and you can, and you showed me how to do this. You can change your equipment. I have a bike loaded in here.
Yep.
And I can change that bike profile, different wheels, different tires, and that will influence this CDA. And now I'm almost ready to break 27 minutes if I go a little better.
A little bit lower.
Clothing, helmet.
On the same power.
Two covers, same power. That's right. Same effort. All right, so now let me reset that. How do I reset it? Just go back this way and do the hard way. All right, now let's say I want to let that magic happen, and maybe I am able to push 271 watts.
So now you gain 29 seconds.
Yep, now I just gained that time at a cost of 10 extra watts. That means I'm trying a little bit harder.
Yep.
So now, let's say I want to, I guess this is the other way to look at it. What you've done 24 on this route?
I think 25 something.
All right, well, let's say I want to get close to you, and let's say I'm trying to get under 26. All right, to get under 26, I'm going to be pushing 305 watts, over 300 watts now. So I know that's not going to be possible unless the magic really happens, but it's not. So now I got to look at that and I say, well, maybe I need to train to increase the wattage that I can sustain for 25 minutes.
So John, let's have some fun with this, because this is a really good example for another piece of this. So this is a net downhill course,
mm-hmm.
right? So what happens on this one if you add weight?
Okay, that's good. Let's go back.
Because weight, I'm not just talking weight on you, but
Yeah.
I'm saying weight on your bike. Because a time trial bike is notoriously heavy.
Yeah.
Right. But let's say you add a pound. Let's see what happens.
Okay, so this is 2735. Let's just add a pound of this rather than changing my bike profile. All right,
well, I guess it goes by 2 pounds.
I did. It is going slower.
Okay, but look at that. 2 pounds, which, do you know how much people would,
That's a water bottle.
It's a water bottle, but on a bike, to lose 2 pounds or gain 2 pounds is exponentially expensive.
No, you're right, but I say it's a water bottle because I won't take any water on this.
But it's only going to cost you 2 seconds.
Yeah, well, that's true. Okay, I guess that's the other way.
Because it's net downhill.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things on this course for like you versus me,
mm-hmm.
you weigh more than me.
Yeah. And
on a net downhill course, that effect there will be an effect of that.
And
it doesn't penalize you nearly as much as it would penalize if this was a flat course or even an uphill course. It would penalize you way more.
Yeah. All right. So even if I go up 10 pounds,
you only lose 17 seconds.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot less than I would have thought. Tell you the truth. That's
but once again, it's because it's a net downhill.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay.
Right? If once again, like we're starting at what, 3,400 feet, and we're ending at 3,200 feet. So you have 200 feet down.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference. I've ran some of these numbers when I did some downhill time trialing in the death race a few years ago, and I was purposely adding weight because the more I weighed, so I was like, make sure my water bottles are full. Put a water bottle in my back pocket on my skin suit, because it actually made a significant difference. I think that the course I was on was like 40K downhill, which all downhill into the desert, and made a big difference. Right?
Wow, interesting.
So
now let's go the other way, because we always hear people talking about cutting the race weight.
Yeah.
Here, this is 7 pounds, and I've only gained 9
9
seconds.
seconds. 9 seconds.
For me to lose 7 pounds.
Well, how much would it cost to lose 7 pounds off of your bike? There's the one.
Well, that's true. Okay, so that's what I think that's where you do start looking for that free save. Well, it's not free; it costs money.
Expensive savings.
But what can you take off your bike to get
Exactly.
down?
But in this case, like I wouldn't care. Right?
Yeah.
If my bike weighed a couple pounds more,
Mm-hmm.
more aero, it would be better.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So that takes us to thinking about like bike choice, for example, on this.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a choice of bikes, I'm absolutely going to look for one with lower drag.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about the weight.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas when I do my Everesting attempt, I don't care about the drag.
That's
I only care about the weight.
That's right.
Right. The drag at 8 miles an hour climbing up a hill is not gonna matter.
No.
So I think that, you know, John, I think that these are awesome topics that, you know, that I'm so glad we're delving into this. So that being said, let's just really quickly talk about the CRR there.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we've done so much work with CRR over the last year.
This CRR determines the rolling resistance force that we already talked about.
Yeah.
So
do you know how this got calculated in here?
I'm sorry, what?
How they came up with that CRR?
For
best bike stick.
For rolling force, it's just CRR times your normal force. It's just a.
Well, what I'm saying is they added in you put in what the road surface was going to be like.
Yep, I have. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was getting at.
To physics. Okay. So yes, I have picked the road surface, and this is also a function of my bike that I have in here.
Yeah.
So, and I think I put in the tires that I have now.
The tires and the width of your rims.
Yeah. Now I am going to use my gator skins. I'm just going to be too lazy. Maybe I get motivated and change my.
So let's just see what happens. And on the CRR, if you weren't using gator skins compared to like the GP 5000s that you have, I know you.
All right, so let's see. How do I quickly change my tires? Well, I guess okay. The gator skins are going to be higher CRR. Let's just do that. So if I just move that.
And I've heard numbers of something like 10% higher or something.
Yeah. So let's go to.
Let's go 10%.
That's right there. Okay.
Oh no, that's only 3% higher.
20, not much.
But that's only 2%.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, 10%. Okay.
I'm saying 10%. So now you're talking 12 seconds.
Yeah.
So not too bad. But that would be exponentially higher if the road surface was rougher.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it does have to do with the road, quite a bit with the road surface. But once again, I mean, for you, 12 seconds probably doesn't matter. 14 seconds doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take this out to an Ironman.
Yeah.
Right. Because this is a half hour.
This is 11 miles. Yeah.
Right. You take this times by 10.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're talking some real time.
Yeah.
Right. Who was it that rode the gator skins in Kona and everybody made fun of?
Was it Tim? No, not Tim. The swimmer. Not Tim Don.
Anyways.
Yeah, I'm going to remember his name afterwards. But yeah,
right. Somebody calculated out his CRR, and they're like, it cost him like 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Then he came back and said, yeah, but I didn't get a flat.
Yeah, that's true.
And the flat could have cost me 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was a gamble. And so you're choosing to use gator skins because you don't want to change your tires.
Yeah.
Right. And I totally get that. But if this was a big time race, you would.
Yeah. No, everything matters. And so now you look for that, those marginal gains where you try to get, just a little bit more here, a little bit more there.
Yep. Now you've got your tire pressure even better, just a little bit better. Yep.
A little bit more power from training, drop drag a little bit, and all of a sudden I'm under 27 minutes.
Yeah, and you're 44 seconds for a tenth of an Ironman, basically.
And that's right. And you can look at these changes and see what's achievable. Obviously, I was doing my profile for Ironman Nice at one point, I kept coming up with some crazy number for total time. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. It was like, my bike ride was going to take me like 3 hours and 20 minutes. And I'm like, so I kept changing these numbers to get under 3 hours, and eventually said, this is not possible.
It told you it wasn't possible?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. I will tell you that, and I think we've talked about this before, but with Best Bike Split, if you stick to it and you hit those power numbers and everything's pretty accurate, it's amazing how close the times actually end up being.
Yeah.
Like, John, I think if those numbers you put in are accurate, and you hit those numbers, you'll be within 20 seconds.
Yep.
The modeling is just that good. As long as the weather, like I said, the vortex doesn't happen too bad on you. But it is quite amazing.
All right, so let's give our best tips for Monday.
Okay, my number one best tip is wear the tightest clothing you possibly can.
That's good.
Yeah, it's so critical that you don't have things flapping around in the wind, and it's, once again, probably doesn't cost you that much.
Yeah.
Right? Especially with people put on a little COVID weight, maybe their clothes are tight already.
That's true.
That's my number one tip. What's your number one tip?
All right, I'll actually steal my number one tip from a friend back in the 80s, Alan, and I was going to a time trial, and he said, and I asked him for advice for how to do the time trial, and he said, when you finish, you should be covered in spit and sweat. And it's so true.
If you're really going to race as hard as you can, especially in a time trial, with no run after it, there should be no holding back.
No, that's right. And if you're in the desert, especially, I race that distance, that time, I'll take water, but I won't drink it. Instead, I'll just spit it back out and get it all over me for a cooling effect.
Gross.
I know. Well, that's the advice, though. It's
I like it. I've never thought of that one.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's a good one. My second advice would be hold the best position that you can, especially on that downhill. Right on the uphill, you'll see me if you're out there early enough in the morning. I don't know what time I'm going to get there, but I'm going to get there pretty early. You'll see me. I'll be standing up on the Oak Creek climb. Because I'll be able to put up way more power, and then I'll be able to kind of give my legs a rest from the time trial position for just a couple minutes. But as soon as that's done and I'm on that downhill, I'm making myself as small as possible.
That's great.
And I think about that. I think about, like, how can I keep reducing my frontal area? Because even if I give up 10 or 15 watts of power, I know that at 35 miles an hour, it doesn't matter.
That's right. That's awesome.
Tip number 2 for me.
All right. Tip number 2 for me, it's still 11 and a half miles.
Yes.
So don't treat it like it's a 100-meter or even a 1K all-out effort. You've got to do 11 and a half miles. You do have to have a pacing plan. And now that I've run Best Bike Splits, I know I need to be around 260 watts. So I'm going to use that information and make sure that I'm, working as hard as I should be at that point, but not overworking. Because if you overcook it in the beginning, it's hard to recover. And
we've talked about this before. And I love this quote. It's never your day. And this happens way more in triathlon, especially long distance triathlon, is you get on the bike and it's like, oh man, I feel really good today. Oh man, look at those watts. Today is my day. No, it's not. It will always come back and bite you. Right? You are who you are. You are what you've trained.
Yeah.
If you've done your testing, you've done your training, and your FTP is 250, it is what it is. And if you go 250 for that first hour, you're going to be, even if it felt great, you always have to pay the piper.
That's right. You are correct, but I like to always think you got to let the magic happen.
And then blow up.
That's right.
No, it's really interesting. Like, but John, I think a lot of it is like you and I, and a lot of the triathletes that we know our bodies really, really well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so yeah, maybe it is your day, but you also know, like you've been there enough times now that you know, like, you know, I feel good today, so I'm gonna keep to my plan, and then my run is gonna be spectacular.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
No, for sure. But at the same time, I think we all need to mature to get to a point where we can understand where we can push ourselves.
Yeah. Oh,
And
for sure.
sometimes you have to take a risk. And you got to say, well, maybe I can push a little bit hard. And then try, one of the best things I did back early on in my racing career was ran a 5K competition every week.
Yeah.
And so you get to learn, you try different strategies, you try different efforts, and you learn what you can and can't do, when you blow up and when you don't. And so I think there is some value in taking the risk, especially on something like what we're doing Monday.
Oh yeah, there's no risk. There's no risk. No, yeah.
Take a, go for it. And if you blow up, you blow up. But
well, if you blow up, hopefully get to the downhill
that's right. That's right.
Before you completely blow up. It won't hurt you as much. Don't blow up halfway up the climb.
That's right. All right. Do you have a tip number 3?
I do. So tip number 3, shave your legs. Right. I especially at this high speed stuff. There's some good research out there that we're looking at 3 or 4 watts potentially, depending on how hairy you are. I'm pretty hairy right now because I haven't raced all year. Normally I wouldn't be that hairy, but shave your legs. That's free. That's free speed.
Well, and it goes along with the clothing research that's out there, socks, shoe coverings, shaving. I mean, you want to make that CD, that fluid passing over you, as small as possible.
Yeah. So that's tip 3 for me. How about you?
All right, I'm going to steal one that actually I got from our local triathlete, Mark Malone. Chew gum.
Oh, yeah.
Chewing gum in the desert is phenomenal. I really, it helps me not have to, it helps me avoid that dry mouth syndrome. Now, the trick is getting the right kind of gum, and what kind of gum you like and what kind of gum you don't like. But it does actually help to
I do it all the time when I'm bike riding.
Yeah.
I really feel a difference when I chew gum, and even sometimes running, when it's really dry mornings. Yeah, I throw a little bit of gum in my mouth, and I think you're absolutely right. Okay, the last one I'll give is, and goes back to the tire pressure. Don't just willy-nilly go into a tire pressure. Like, go look it up. There's lots of data out there. Try and figure out what the best tire pressure is for you and your setup. I mean, once again, doesn't cost money to get the right tire pressure, and the wrong tire pressure, especially way too high, really can hurt you.
Yep.
If anything, err on the side of lower rather than too high.
Yep. No, that's good.
Yeah.
And that's everything we're seeing in the research is exactly that. You're better lower than higher.
Yeah. Okay. You got one more?
All right. Be safe. And if you pass someone, or if you are being passed, words of encouragement. If you're doing it well while anyone else.
Unless you got the spit and
That's right. That's right.
Maybe not the last 100 meters where you're spitting and when you say it's spit and something all over you.
But definitely be safe, because we're talking about CDA, and a lot of people say, well, CDA, I'm going to put my head down, I'm not going to look up as much. No, don't do that. We've seen plenty of accidents out there on that section of road.
Yeah, for sure. Like, this is not the World Championship. This is not a closed course.
No, you may be coming up on other people. Cars may be parked. I mean, you need to be watching all that. You got to be vigilant. You can't let your guard down, and even during a race, you have to be, because
for sure,
there's just too many things that can cross your path, and so you always need to be aware. And so, I guess that's my last tip: is be aware, be safe, and encourage others as you see them.
Yeah. I'll give you one bonus. Clean your bike.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one.
A clean bike is a fast bike.
That's right.
Right. I actually don't know if that'd be a good little study to determine what the difference of a really dirty bike versus a clean bike. But
oh, it can be quite a bit. Yeah. I mean, your drivetrain.
Oh yeah. Well, yes, that's another one, right? We did not talk about drivetrain at all, but a clean drivetrain, very, very important.
Yeah.
We can get into that one another time for sure.
And Chip Hendry just commented, watch out for the rabbits, because that happened to him. He got hit by a rabbit, or he hit a rabbit, whichever way you want to look at it.
Out there?
No, he was on River Mountain, dude.
Well, just last week or 2 weeks ago, I think I told you I ran over a squirrel coming down Deer Creek.
Oh.
At like 35 miles an hour.
Wow. Yeah.
I seriously almost crashed.
You're lucky. Yeah.
I was very, very lucky. And and you know, out at Red Rock, watch out for the snakes.
Yeah.
And the turtles. I almost hit a turtle once, because I was time trialing, and I was kind of looking at my computer, and I look up and I'm like, oh, there's a rock there. Okay. I look up again, the rock moved. I was like, whoa, it was a turtle.
Oh goodness.
So anyways, yeah, be safe out there, everybody. And have fun. I mean, we've been kind of cooped up and not racing, and you know, just when you finish, hopefully you have a smile on your face. Well, maybe not right away, but like a minute or two later, once you caught your breath.
Yep.
Have a smile on your face. No,
that's right. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this is great. This is good stuff. We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we did, as we always do.
That's right. All right, Ted. I'll see you this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John.
Thank you.